2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, it looks like everybody's here, and it's just a few seconds off of 3 o'clock, so we'll start. I'm Councillor Peter Black, and I'm the Vice Chairman. Chairman Columbus is on personal business, so I'm taking the chair in his place. And I would like to first start off by acknowledging our wonderful volunteers. It seems like Judy Ann McCall is here just about every week. So, Judy Ann, if you're watching, and you should be, thank you very much. Appreciate all that you do. And anyone that has one of these devices or a noisemaker or a rattle or anything like that, please, now's the time to put it on silence. Thank you for that. And I guess we'll go next to disclosures of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Are there any? Seeing none, and we're going to move on to the consent items. We have 3. Is there anything that...
Sorry, we need to do the approval.
Okay, sorry. And I was trying to get away from doing the approval of additions to the agenda, but I just couldn't slip it by the clerk. So we do have 3, and I'm going to deal with each one of them separately, individually. And the first one, addition to the agenda, is a closed session. It's a verbal update, property-related matter in Ward 1. And I'd like to see those in favor, or what's that? Oh, sorry, yep. I need a mover, Councillor Oliver, and Mayor Luke seconds it. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none, those in favor? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's passed unanimously. And the second item is a walk-on deputation. Generally, these are discouraged according to our procedural bylaw. But nonetheless, we do have this as an addition to the agenda, and it is a deputation from, I haven't got her full name, Karen? Okay. Could you say the name?
Through the Vice Chair, the deputation is by Karen D'Agostino.
Okay, and it's regarding the Port Ryerson Road and speeding on it, and we do have a mover, Mayor Luke, I believe, and a seconder, Councillor Oliver. So is there any discussion on this, Mayor Luke?
Is this for 3 o'clock or 5 o'clock? I just want to know on the agenda.
Which one are we putting it under? 3? Okay, it would go to the bottom of the 3 o'clock.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything further? And those in favor? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that carries. And then the third addition to the agenda is another deputation, and it's by Mr. Peter Gregor, and I think some material's been handed out in regards to the access road for some construction in Waterford, Community Phase 2. So do we have a mover on that? You're not moving, but you want to...
Yes, I wasn't aware this was coming forward. One of the adjacent property owners I have a vested interest in. I have a family member that lives there.
Okay, so you want to declare.
I want to declare a conflict on that particular item. I won't be sitting, or I won't be listening, or I won't be voting. Thank you.
All right. Sorry about that, Councillor Sonnenberg. You're right. I did remember you declaring last time. So I do need a mover and a seconder before we can have any discussion on this. So Councillor Brunton, moving, and seconder, Councillor Height. So any discussion on it? Councillor Brunton?
Thank you. My question is, this is the construction traffic control plan we're referring to?
Well, as far as I know, yes. So we had a handout that should be in front of you, and it's just to allow a deputation, I guess, for further information and explanation.
Okay, and my only question, I guess, is has our engineering department had a chance to go over it in detail?
And I see the head shaking no from Public Works.
All right, I'll wait and see what happens. Thank you.
Okay, so those in favor of adding this to the agenda, and I'm seeing, well, a majority of hands. Okay, thank you. Now we're going to move on to our consent items. We have 3 of them. And would anyone like to remove any of those? I don't see any hands. Good. Can I have a mover? Mayor Luke, seconder Councillor Wells. Discussion, those in favor? Okay, that's carried. Thank you. And moving on to, we don't have any presentations, so we're going to go right into our deputations. And I do see Mr. Frank Woodcock sitting at the back. And Frank, could you come forward, introduce yourself? And I'll remind everyone here, our procedural bylaw allows for 10 minutes only. And I'll let you know when you have 1 minute left, and that will be the end of your deputation. And then council will have the opportunity to ask any questions afterwards for clarification or anything, any further motions that might occur. Okay, Mr. Woodcock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and councillors. My name is Frank Woodcock. I'm with Pathways for People, and I want to tell you it's a pleasure to bring you some good news. Pathways for People, it's our 10th anniversary, and this year, to get ourselves better known, we've been around to each and every BIA, Chamber of Commerce, Board of Trade, and our message has been that Norfolk trails and cycling tours are good for business. We've been well received, and at one of our gatherings, it was recommended that we present to council to let you and the viewers know that Norfolk's open for business as far as cycling is concerned. So, I've already made this presentation to councillors Brunton, Black, Columbus, who's not here, and Wells, but I've added some new stuff just to keep you awake. Okay? That's a picture of the Black Bridge, by the way. We got a lot of people up there cycling and taking in the view. Norfolk Pathways for People, like I said, is 10 years old, and we're a community coalition that advances the development and improvement of connected pathways in Norfolk County. We promote the regular use of trails and sidewalks and roadways for health, recreation, and active transportation. That's our website. I have booklets for each councillor that I'll give to the clerk afterwards, and in it is our postcard with our website on it. The Norfolk County's active transportation strategy, which was funded through the health unit, it promotes the county network that we have that supports cycling and walking through improved and enhanced infrastructure. That's using the road allowance, and we're talking about paved shoulders, bike routes, sidewalks, etc. And the funding from this, as I said, came from the health unit. The picture that you see ahead of you came from the Eva Brooke Donnelly Museum, and that's the Simcoe Cycling Club. And this was around 1897. And this cycling club was very, very active in Norfolk County. In Simcoe, we had a riverside oval, and the oval was 2,642 feet long. And cyclists came from far and wide, including Toronto, and they'd had to come by train because we didn't have a road network that would get them here at the time. And these gentlemen and ladies put on cycling events in the area. And there was one fellow called Mr. Blaney. He was from Linville. No, he was from Wyndham Center. And He, at this same time, had 6 world cycling records, and they included a 5-mile race, but they also included a 100-mile race. And for them to be racing 100 miles at this time period is quite phenomenal. Mr. Blaney is buried in Linville Cemetery, and you can go and see his gravesite there at any time. We have a number of rail trails in Norfolk County where you can ride: Waterford Heritage Trail, Lynn Valley Trail, Delhi Rail Trail. Turkey Point Mountain Bike Club has a network as well. We also have the Great Waterfront Trail, which stretches across Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, and it uses Front Road, and it's signed, and it generates a fair amount of economic activity, which I'll tell you about later. We have 10 on-road cycling tours that inside the Norfolk tourism brochure in the centerfold is a map, and it has both sides of the map is full of cycling. All our trails and these 10 cycling routes are highlighted. And all these cycling routes are mapped on the county GIS layer. All you have to do is go to Norfolk County Maps. There's a whole map just dedicated to cycling routes and trails in Norfolk County, and it's a very, very helpful thing for tourism. And while speaking of tourism, Norfolk County, you may not be aware of this, has a website up now which helps people that want to come here for bicycle tourism. And on that website, it helps you prepare what you're going to do, what you're going to see when you come to Norfolk County. I'd like to tell you a little bit about Turkey Point Mountain Bike Club. They have 76 kilometers of trail. They have 422 paid members. 27% of those are females. In 2015, their trail counter recorded 7,000 riders on one trail using one trail counter. They have 50% of their members are from Norfolk County, 50% of their members are from outside the county, and that includes London, Kitchener, Hamilton, and St. Catharines. On April 16th, the snow was gone from the trails in Turkey Point, and word got out, and a family from Quebec City arrived here to ride the trails, because one of the benefits of trails in Norfolk County is that we have the longest season for cycling in Ontario. Turkey Point trails are fast becoming a destination and widely recognized as one of the best places to ride in Ontario. Here's a little fact for you. In Norfolk County, we have 1,657 kilometers of walking, running, cycling trails. That's a phenomenal amount of trails. And Norfolk County has the highest percentage of paved roads in Ontario. And that brings people here by the bike load. Here's some facts on the economic impact of cycle tourism. Locally, the Tour de Norfolk in 2014 brought in $173,000 to the county. The Great Waterfront Trail brought in $184,000 to the county. Provincially, in 2014, we had in Ontario 1.7 million cyclists. That's cycle tourists, and they spent $428 million while they were here. And an interesting part about cyclists is that they spend more as tourists than regular tourists. And you'll see the statistic there, $255 per cycling tourist to $171 for regular tourists. Rick Boyko, who locally owns Boyko Source for Sports, I went to him and asked him, how's your cycle business going? And he said, and it's a quote, and if you know Rick, it'll sound just like him, in a nutshell, bikes are now the biggest part of my business. And that's one of the sports sports outlets for selling bikes in the county. Now, the province has come on board with cycle tourism too. Last year, they put out $10 million for municipal cycling infrastructure, $15 million for provincial cycling infrastructure, and they instituted new laws, one being the 1 meter law, where a motorist must pass a cyclist by a meter or more. And they also increased fines for dooring. And dooring is the activity where someone opens their door on their car and a bicycle runs into that door. So there's increased fines for that. And this is the good news. There's a bike-friendly community award, the Share the Road Coalition, and it was Pathways for People that brought Share the Road to Norfolk County. This coalition has put together a new group, and they make determinations upon applications for communities that are bike-friendly. 72
Frank,
municipalities.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, and
Is time up?
I'd listen to you all day. You have 1 minute left.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I'll get to the end. It's funny, when I practiced at home, so this Share the Road, Pathways for People this year are going to put in another application. We applied last year, 2016 actually, and got an honorable mention. But things have changed in the county. We've got more facts. We've got more information. Each of the BIAs and the Chamber of Commerce have given us a letter of support. I'm sure the county will support us. I know a lot of county staff are behind us. And we're going to put that recommendation in. And I think we're going to bring it home this time. And one of the reasons is we have an active transportation master plan that's being put to use, and we now have lanes on Swimming Pool Road and the Cockshut.
That'll do it, Frank. So maybe we can keep it going a little bit with some questions from around the table. Are there any questions of the deputation, Mr. Woodcock? Yes, Councillor Oliver.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Frank, for your presentation. You didn't mention anything during your remarks about the Trans-Canada Trail. Am I correct in recalling we have a pretty significant chunk of Trans-Canada Trail within our county that overlays on the trail networks that you've described?
Thank you. First, though, Jim, if I could call you Jim, because I know you. I want to thank you because you were there at the beginning of Pathways for People. We met in the basement of the library. A group from Toronto came and talked to us, and you were instrumental in helping us get going, so I thank you. Yes, I'm a member and the secretary of the Waterford Heritage Trail, and that is part of the Trans-Canada Trail, which actually goes from coast to coast to coast. It comes down into Simcoe and then takes the Delhi route over to Delhi, and then that is being prepared to move all the way to Windsor. Tillsonburg has already got their section done through Oxford County. We just have to link from Delhi up to La Salette area, and Trans-Canada Trail will be bringing people right across Canada to our door.
Okay, Councillor Breton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks, Frank, for being here. I just wanted to comment that I heard the presentation at the Simcoe BIA a month or so ago, and I got to say I was quite impressed, and I did not understand the value that these people bring to the county. And I also raised a couple of issues after that presentation regarding some very, I call it, short-term improvements where we can help with the bike club. And there's not a day goes by where I don't have bikes go by my home on the 8th concession of Charlotteville. At this time of year, I don't know, I think it's different clubs or whatever, but they seem to travel that route, and they use, what is it, Evergreen Hill Road to get in and out of Simcoe for some reason. So, and we got two nice paths now on that road, I call them. They're maybe not as wide as they should be, but they are no problem, and I use them quite a bit myself. But I'm hoping that with your presentation and some help along the way that we can improve things. So Anyway, thank you.
Yes, thanks for your comment. I was on a 36K bike ride this morning, and I ended up past your place. And I know what your concern is, and I felt that concern as I left the 8th and transitioned to Evergreen Hill. It's only about 100 meters, but there's a lot of truck traffic on that, and it's not that safe. But because cyclists use Evergreen Hill and the paved shoulders that are there to exit Norfolk, it's an egress. We're looking forward to the active transportation getting to the point where there's paved shoulders between Evergreen Hill and the 8th, and actually the 7th, because a lot of people go out the 7th, back the 8th, or vice versa.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't see anyone else, so I would say thank you very much, Frank, for all you do, Pathways for People, all the trail organizations. They've had a huge impact in Norfolk County and have come a long way. If we look at the time of amalgamation until now, we certainly have come a long way, and to the benefit of everyone in the county. So thank you for all you do and all your co-workers. Thank you.
Just along your comments, I'd like to say that Gord Pennington, who is the grandfather of trails around here, he says very, very often that he never thought in his lifetime he'd see the development of trails that we have in Norfolk County.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And could we have Mayor Luke receive his information?
Receive his information, Mr. Chair.
Those in favor? Opposed? Seconder, who seconded that? Councillor Geisens, and that's carried. And I should have at the beginning of the meeting asked Stephanie to introduce our students. And of course, Norfolk County hires a lot of students. We're supportive of the whole educational, educating people about municipal government, and we're very happy to have the students. And Stephanie, would you like to introduce our student?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. We have Alexa Leach with us today. She's the Council Services summer student, and she's very interested in watching the proceedings today. So welcome, Alexa.
Okay, thank you. And then at the end of the meeting, we'll blame you for everything that goes wrong, okay? So you'll get baptism by fire. All right, we're going to move on to our next deputation, and it is Mr. Bruce Veltri, and it's regarding the Holden Ave petition. The residents apparently aren't too interested in having a sidewalk up there. So, Bruce, welcome, and again, you have 10 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you very much for allowing me to speak here on behalf of the residents on Holden Avenue. There are many here, maybe we could raise your hands, people who are from Holden. So we have quite a few here in the group that are here to support, we're here together, okay. So we are very interested in saving Norfolk County some money. Okay, so the property owners all got together, and one really positive thing that occurred from us getting together is we've really kind of formed a little community watch almost, and that's a real benefit that's just been really exciting for us. We had a couple of break-ins in cars in our neighborhood, and because we had formed this network of people communicating, we were able to communicate very quickly about what was happening, and then to help to make our neighborhood safer. So that was a positive from all of this, and I hope this is positive here as well. So the property owners, we formed a petition, and we had all of the property owners go through in the neighborhood, and it was signed overwhelmingly by the property owners to not have a sidewalk installed on Holden Avenue. Okay. One of the reasons is Holden Avenue would be singled out in our neighborhood with having a sidewalk. Okay, there are no other streets, comparable streets in the area are Dora Drive, Sunset Circle, those streets there, none of them, they've all been done recently as far as their road work has been done, and no sidewalks were put in. So we're the actual last street to be done in our neighborhood, and then they want to put a sidewalk on us, on our street. So it really will stand out for many, many years, for decades, as the only sidewalk in that area. Okay, the other streets have all been done recently. Holden would remain with the only sidewalk. The sidewalk would extend from West Street to the end of Holden, and then it would just end there. Okay, this gives the impression that Holden is kind of a thoroughway, and Holden is definitely not a thoroughway. It just hooks around and comes back up as Beckett. So it's not a thoroughway to get anywhere. So really a need for a sidewalk in that sense, like the way you would have it on West Street, certainly isn't necessary. Now, we feel that it could have a negative effect on property values as homeowners compared to the homes nearby, as I suggested on Sunset, Dora, which have full front yards. Okay, we certainly appreciate the infrastructure work, the fresh new roadway. We're really looking forward to that. But we feel as a group and as the principal stakeholders, the property owners, we would like to remain in sync with the rest of the neighborhood and remain sidewalk free. I do have some examples as well as streets that have been done recently that don't have sidewalks, but we can discuss those if you want. Okay? Any
Okay, thanks very
questions?
much,
Thank you.
Bruce, and you did that
Now,
in
do
less
you
than...
have the copy of the, you all have a copy of the petition? Okay, all right, good.
Okay, so you have, we all have a copy of that? And the clerk has a copy of it? Okay, great. Mayor Luke?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Dr. Veltri, for your deputation this afternoon. Some of us, Mr. Chair, I have a question for this gentleman. Some of us certainly attended the open house at Talbot Gardens and had discussions with some of the residents, and they certainly gave us their sentiments as to their distaste for sidewalks. My question is, and I'm going to the petition, certainly I have counted and looked at it, 35 residents listed here over the pages. 27 households of 35 have put their signatures, they do not want sidewalks, and 8 did not sign. Of those 8, some were away in Florida, there was a vacant house, there was one house, I believe it says renting on it. Do you know of any resident on Holden Ave that is, definitely wants a sidewalk on that street, to your knowledge? Okay, please. 31, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Oliver?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for your presentation. I was very interested in your comments about looking forward to having the street improvements done, and I acknowledge that. Knowing that you were coming today, I made a point within the last couple of days of driving Holden, and it's in dire need of those improvements. In your discussions, and did you get any feedback from any of the residents that you sampled, that there's any concern with, once we improve the street, cars tend to drive faster? And did anyone acknowledge that there could be a greater risk to pedestrians on the street once the improvements are made, because cars will tend to go faster when the pavement is smooth?
I wasn't part of any kind of discussion like that, but then again, I'm not sure. I don't want to question you, but I don't know the validity of that you drive faster because the road is newer. I don't know if we could say that that's a fact.
I don't know either,
You're
but I know we've
suggesting
had anecdotally folks that have come to council after such improvements have been done and have begun to complain about the speed of traffic on the street.
Okay. I'm not familiar with that, sorry.
Anyone else? Councillor Brunton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess a question I have is, for 50 years, I'm not aware of any problems in that area on that street. And I look at it as, I class it as an urban residential. And, we made a policy apparently at some point with this council to put sidewalks on all our streets. But why we did that, I don't know. People must think it's safer, but I've walked on a street similar to this for 20 years, and I find that many people with scooters and even wheelchairs want to go on the road more than they do the sidewalk because it's smoother. Plain and simple. For years, we spent thousands of dollars putting handicap ramps on the corners. And for what? A lot of them still don't use them. So I support sidewalks on collector and arterial roads, but urban residential, to me, is a waste of money for the taxpayers, and it's an inconvenience to the people that live there. So I'll leave it at that.
You got a question?
I'm just pointing out my concerns to Mr. Veltri. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brunton.
Is there anyone else? Then could we have a motion to receive the deputation as information? Councillor Oliver, those in favor? Opposed? Or seconder? It was Councillor Sonnenberg, and it is carried. And Bruce, thank you very much. And,
Thank you.
Committee, I don't know if there's any action coming forth out of this. If Councillor Brunton, is there a motion that you want to put down, and then you can make your comments.
Well, no, I guess my question through you to engineering is, when is the project coming before council?
Staff?
Through the chairman to council, it is a council-approved project, so it is already approved and it's going forward. The tender will be issued shortly and awarded shortly for that work.
Can we remove the sidewalk if we vote on removing the sidewalk now, or do we have to wait till the tender comes in?
Through the chairman to council, I would respectfully request that you refer it back to staff, and we can send a report forward so that everything can happen all at the same time, so that you can make an informed decision at that time, because we need to, depending on where it stands in the process, there may be a financial ramification from a contracts point of view if it's removed partway through. So we're aware, if that's the direction council would like, if council would be so kind as to provide us with direction, we'll make sure that that comes forward at the appropriate time so that council's able to make a decision about it when they have all of the relevant information. Typically, when we have these requests, we also have, afterwards, we receive all the requests for the people who do want the sidewalk, who didn't speak up at this time. So it would be more appropriate if it was just referred back to staff, and we'll bring it forward all together as a single report for council.
Go ahead, Councillor.
My question is it out for tender now?
Through the chairman to council, I don't know if it's in the process. I don't know if it's actually out on the street this minute. I'd have to figure out exactly where it stands in the process.
Well, I guess my question is, if it's out for tender, why can't we put an addendum out? And if this council makes a decision to remove the sidewalk now, can we put an addendum out that it be removed?
Through the chairman to council, it's not currently on the street. I'm just not sure where it is in the process.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a recommendation now then that we have this sidewalk removed one way or another.
Okay, so the motion is to remove the sidewalk from Holden Ave.
That's correct.
And before we move on with that and get a seconder, Lee?
Sorry, through the chairman, if I could just make a suggestion to that, I think we'd have to do as an exception to the council policy, not just a motion to do that. We actually just need to, it accomplishes the same thing, but in order to make sure that it flows properly, it would be an exception to the council-approved policy to permit Holden Ave to be reconstructed without sidewalk in place.
Okay, so you don't have a problem putting that in as part of your motion, and Stephanie would have that. So is there a seconder for this? Then Mayor Luke, seconding. And anyone like to speak to it, Mayor Luke?
Well, certainly, I heard our GM, Lee Robinson, ask for this to go back to staff, so I respect that comment. But Mr. Chair, in supporting this, we held a public meeting. The public came forward. And again, I have learned tonight that there is a family, and I respect the reason. It's valid why they would prefer to have sidewalks, but clearly the people on Holden Ave that live there, it is a residential area. It's not a, well, it does go around in a U-bend and come back up the other way, but it is not a, most people I would think that travel Holden for the most part are going to visit or live there. It's not like Well, it's the hard way to get to Talbot, but, not Talbot, Chiro, pardon me. It's not the quickest way. But, Mr. Chair, there's no secret here that the residents do not want a sidewalk. They've never had a sidewalk. They're not asking for something that they don't have or get rid of something. They just want status quo. I support that, and I think we can work that out with whatever we are at the phase of tendering, contractor, engineering. Once we make that decision here, those adjustments will be made. Thank you.
Councillor Oliver.
Very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm afraid I can't support the motion. I do respect the deputation that came, absolutely. I do think there's a difference if you go and look at the streets. The deputation mentioned Sunset and a couple of other streets that are essentially loops, go off from Holden and back onto Holden. To me, as I drove it and looked at it over the last number of years even, it is more, I admit it's not a full arterial street, but it is a more significant street in terms of traffic passing through than either of the others that were referenced as not having sidewalks. The other thing I would do, and this is a sad thing to have to do, but my colleague saying he doesn't remember any serious accidents, I recall an elderly lady was killed by a garbage truck, I believe, on one of those side streets that does feed out to Holden Ave a few years ago because there was no sidewalk and she was having to walk out on the street. So I think there are reasons why we should continue with this policy, and especially in this situation, go ahead and have this sidewalk installed. So I appreciate the residents. I understand why generally people don't necessarily want those sidewalks today, but to me, this is one where it does make a lot of sense to go ahead with it.
Okay, thank you. And David Cribbs, CAO.
Council, in support of Ms. Robinson's submissions to you, I would like to suggest to you that the motion as it stands on the floor has a serious procedural fairness problem with it. It is June. Not 5 full months ago, this council, well, you passed a budget, I guess this is capital, you passed a budget the better part of a year ago. You examined a number of items closely, you had a debate, I don't know what the vote count was on this exact item, but a majority of you felt there was value in going forward with this project. You do have the capacity to change your minds, you absolutely have the capacity to react as a result of submissions made to you by the public. But what is not a reasonable expectation of the public is that a delegation come and then that result instantly in a motion to reverse, to fundamentally reverse the decision of a majority of you, which was the exact opposite. I would strongly recommend you consider deferring this for a staff report that does two things. Staff can give you the best advice on how to do this if this is the will of a majority of you. But also, and above and beyond that, it gives an opportunity for those who don't support the submission you just heard to mobilize themselves, or not, as the case may be. I'm not here to attempt to sway your decision one way or the other, but you've heard a very strong submission, and it's really not appropriate, or procedurally it is better, strike that not appropriate, that's too harsh, that's unfair. But procedurally, it is preferable to get the staff report to give you a better avenue to make this change, if such is your will, but also to allow an opportunity for other opinions to be provided to you. Because at the moment, a majority of you have thought that this is an appropriate expenditure of public funds. And that's where you sit. So I just remind you of that. Procedurally, it is preferable to refer this back to staff.
Well, we do have a motion on the floor, and what I would ask is if there was a councillor that wanted to move a motion for deferral. So, okay, I'm seeing Mayor Luke and Councillor Wells' hand.
Well, Mr. Chair, I am confused here. I can't speak for staff, but I can tell you that members of this council have been at the public meeting and were certainly aware that there was a strong message that the residents of Holden, the majority of them, did not want a sidewalk. So I don't know where we are with the RFP, but somewhere along the way, we've missed this discussion. I remember dealing with this in a budget. I don't remember any discussion at this table about sidewalks on Holden. So I disagree with respectfully with the CAO on this. At what point are we at with the RFP, and at what point is this council ready to deal with this sidewalk? And personally, Mr. Chair, I think that moment is here and now. I don't know how we've had this in the works. The capital budget for this year was approved last October. I don't know. The signs are up. They've been up for a few weeks there at Holden that this is coming. Why hasn't this issue been brought forward from the public meeting to this council chamber? I'm not buying that this is all of a sudden something that's been sprung on us by some residents here at the last moment. I was fully prepared to deal with this the day after the public meeting. So I'm not pointing a finger at any staff or staff in general. Is somebody around this table surprised that we're here tonight listening to deputations about a sidewalk or no sidewalk on Holden Ave? I am not. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And thank you, Councillor Wells. Okay, and Councillor Brunton for your second time.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just so you know, I agree with Mayor Luke here. I brought this issue before council a few weeks ago. I wondered why we hadn't heard about the petition coming from the open house. And here we are. This isn't the first time we've canceled a sidewalk. We canceled one not too long ago in Delhi in a subdivision, in a new subdivision. Like, the people have spoke. They don't want a sidewalk. And you know, it's not a complicated thing. They're usually in the contracts and a square meter price. And if we put out an addendum now, if it hasn't closed, and tell the contractors bidding it that we don't want a sidewalk, they'll understand that. And even if they have bid it and it's been submitted, which I would hope our staff would tell us where it's at, you can still cancel it. It's a unit price contract, I'm quite sure. That's how those things are done. And you just can't, look at the money we'll save. Thousands of dollars. That's a long stretch of road there. And at a price per square meter, you're talking a lot of money. It's pretty simple. And I stand by my motion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Stephanie, do you think you could read the motion once again?
Through the Vice Chair, that Council remove the addition of a sidewalk from the Holden Avenue reconstruction RFP following the RFP addendum process within the Council-approved purchasing policy.
Okay. Anything further? I'm going to call the question then. Those in favor? Okay. 1, 2, 3. Those opposed? Okay, that motion is lost as I'm voting in favor of the motion. So that's a tie vote. The motion is lost. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can we put a motion on to have that staff report?
Okay, so a motion on the floor requesting a staff report. Seconder and Councillor Sonnenberg. And discussion on this, Mayor Luke?
Well, I have no choice but reluctantly to support it to keep this request alive, and so I will. Mr. Chair, 2 years ago, a major road, artery road in Delhi called Argyle Street. Contractor, RFP was accepted, contractor on site, trees cut, and the residents were up in arms and came to this council not wanting a sidewalk on the north side of Argyle. And this council listened, and this council voted, and the sidewalk was removed. Thank you.
Okay. Anything further on discussion? Yes, Councillor Sonnenberg.
I've been an advocate of sidewalks ever since I was elected to this position. I like cyclists on trails away from traffic, and I like pedestrians on sidewalks away from traffic. Thank you.
Okay, anything further? Those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those opposed? Okay, so it's carried. So, thank you. So this will go back to staff for a report, and Lee? Just Lee? Yeah, Lee? I'm just wondering if, do you know when this would come back to council?
Through the chairman to council, I'm hesitant to provide a date here and now. I'd like to see where it all stands and see the best way to bring this forward, but I'll certainly report back to council with the date that you can expect it to come forward so that we're able to communicate that with the residents.
So, and there would still be some time to remove the sidewalks?
Absolutely.
All right.
We understand the intention of council by that motion, and we'll make certain that it comes forward at the same time so that it all goes together.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to move on to our next deputation, and that is Wendy Breen, and this is regarding the safety for the Seiler seniors. And okay, welcome to council, and I'll repeat to you, you have 10 minutes, and I'll remind you you have 1 minute left.
Well, I didn't start yet. I'm just wondering if this can come down any further. Can everyone hear now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we're good. Thank you, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And again, thank you for allowing us to be a part of your meeting this afternoon. My name is Wendy Breen, and I live at 10 Lyndale Road in Simcoe. Because of the nature of this presentation and the time of day of this meeting, our group has decided that I will offer our presentation solo, as it's our collective belief that a fan club is not a necessity to validate our concerns. The facts will speak for themselves. I'm sharing with you a petition signed by residents of our neighborhood, the homes between Argyle and Summer, a cluster of 30-some dwellings. Although the petition says we're concerned about the area between Blossom Street and Argyle Street, there was such an overwhelming support of the petition from the folks who live in the area between Argyle and the crest of Lyndale Hill that I chose not to ask residents who live beyond the crest of the hill to sign the petition. It's pretty clear from those signatures that the people who live between Seiler and Argyle are concerned, and as the petition states, we're asking for the County of Norfolk's help. We intend to leave the decision of exactly what is needed to control traffic flow and ensure pedestrian safety in the capable hands of those who have the knowledge of these matters, period. Just fix it soon, please. It's no exaggeration that we really do fear for our lives every time we step off the curve at Lyndale Road between Seiler Woods and Argyle Street. I'm sure you are aware, our neighborhood, Lyndale Road, Seiler Woods, has undergone a significant transformation over the last couple of years. Over 30 new homes, some condos and some single-family residences have been built on the former wooded property in the south part of Lyndale Road. The vehicles associated with these 30 or so new residents would have increased the traffic flow in our area only very slightly. In preparation for this presentation, my husband and I conducted a very unsophisticated traffic study, which consisted of us sitting on our front porch and counting cars. In 10 5-minute segments at different times during the day yesterday, we recorded and averaged between 7 and 17 cars a minute passing in front of us. The variance was due to different times of day. Not one of those recorded vehicles lived in our neighborhood, hardly what one would expect on a residential street. In addition to our tiny development, I'm sure you are aware, there's also been a continuous influx of new people to the homes at the larger subdivisions being built at the end of Donnelly and on the south side of Simcoe. And as a result of this huge growth in residential units, it's also obvious to all that the traffic in our small town has increased significantly. It's also a fact that in addition to the growth in Simcoe, many new businesses have been opened or relocated to the Queensway area. We now have access to the Superstore, Canadian Tire, Winners, LCBO, Walmart, and some very nice restaurants and a myriad of other businesses. With a significant increase in traffic volume in the past year or so, it appears that people are now choosing to use Lyndale Road as a main thoroughfare between Highway 24 and Ireland Road, as well as using Lyndale and then Donnelly to access all that Queenstrip Way has to offer. While I know you're not necessarily interested in hearing secondhand information, I regularly hear from folks in other parts of town who say they much prefer to access the Queensway amenities via our street, as they prefer not to have to deal with all the traffic lights going up 24 and along the Queensway. Also, I've heard out-of-towners say they use Lyndale when coming into town to avoid the lights and stop signs in other areas. Lovely, just lovely. Exactly where the Lyndale traffic originates really is irrelevant here. What is important is that there is much more traffic using our street now than there was when we moved here from the wilds of Brant County last year. I would like you to note at this time that one of the reasons we chose to move into town was that I live in a body which has a disability, and it was our hope that I would be able to maintain more mobility if I were able to walk more. While my abilities are not the issue here, my safety and the safety of every one of my neighbors is the reason I stand before you. That's it. Excuse me. We need your help, and we need it now. We absolutely must be able to cross Lyndale Road safely without fear of being run over. We deserve this. Other than one solitary stop sign at the corner of Lyndale and Donnelly, there are no other impediments to restrict the traffic between Highway 24 and Ireland Road. When westbound traffic leaves the stop sign at Donnelly, it travels totally unimpeded and unhindered down the long Lyndale Hill for more than a whole kilometer before reaching 24. When those westbound vehicles reach the crest of the hill and begin their descent, it is only then that the drivers are able to say there may be a pedestrian trying to cross the intersection at Seiler and Lyndale. At that point, drivers have less than 100 feet to bring their vehicle to a complete stop, allowing the pedestrian to safely cross. Of course, by then they would have accelerated to the point where they're driving 50 clicks, the maximum speed limit posted there. Really, that's a silly statement for me to make because it seems no one ever drives the speed limit coming up and down that hill, but that's another matter, and it's one I'm sure the OPPL will sort out in good time. The reality is that it doesn't matter how fast the vehicle is traveling. It still has less than 100 feet to come to a complete stop, and if it hits me, I'm still dead. I urge you to try traveling west on that speed limit on Lyndale and see how it feels to come to the crest of the hill and see pedestrians at the Seiler intersection halfway across the road. Let's pretend traffic is coming up the hill and you don't have the luxury of veering into the other lane. We all know what will happen next. On more than one occasion, it has been my experience to begin crossing with no traffic in view, and suddenly when I'm halfway across the road, there's a car or truck bearing down on me. I'm not the only one who has experienced this. I digress. Take a breath. Let's continue with the issue of Lyndale-Seiler intersection. To further compound our problem, now that the door-to-door home mail delivery has been eliminated, most residents in our neighborhood access mail via postal boxes at the corner of Lyndale and Seiler. In addition, since this is the only road into the condo residences of Seiler, people use this section of Lyndale to cross to the north side of the sidewalk, Lyndale sidewalk. That's a lot of old people trying to cross a busy road day in and day out. Many of the folks who cross here may be like me, a little slower. Enough said about that, as it's pretty obvious from available demographics that most of the residents in our neighborhood are either seniors or close to reaching that milestone. Our second area of concern is further west on the hill, near the area where Wilson Street meets Argyle and becomes Lyndale. When eastbound traffic coming up the hill passes the high school, they climb the hill all the way to Donnelly. Once again, more than a whole kilometer without any sort of traffic calming solution in place. Due to a blind curve at the sharp end where Wilson becomes Lyndale at Argyle, pedestrians here too are once more placed in the precarious position of trying to navigate their way across Lyndale. Not here either is there a sidewalk or stop sign, pedestrian bridge, or anything to allow them to cross from one sidewalk to the other. Drivers heading eastward cannot see if a pedestrian is in the middle of Lyndale trying to make the transition from the north to north sidewalks until the driver comes around the sharp bend at the corner of Argyle. Once again, it's less than 100 feet for a vehicle traveling at full legal speed limit to come to a complete stop to avoid hitting the pedestrian. I'm sure you'll agree neither of these scenarios is acceptable. Were Lyndale simply a straight road where the visibility is not obscured by sharp turns or blind hills, we would not have a problem. This situation is a danger to residents, and it's not just the silver-haired crowd who has a problem with Lyndale Road. Just last week, I observed a young mother who had a toddler by the hand and was pushing a baby stroller, trying trying to make the dash across Lyndale before a west-traveling vehicle would crest the hill with her and her children in its path. Every day we see teenagers on their way to school, and on more than one occasion we have heard the screech of tires and the obscenities offered when there is a difference of opinion as to exactly who, the driver or the student, has the right-of-way. In my humble opinion, children should not be expected to argue with motorists when all the kid is trying to do is get to school. In conclusion, we are now asking for you, Norfolk County, to protect us, not just the young, agile high school students who dash across Lyndale laughing at the traffic rushing toward them. We've all done that.
You have 1 minute left?
But the ones among us who are a little more vulnerable, small children, seniors, and persons with disabilities. We are the ones who often walk slowly. We need to be able to safely make our way from one side of the street to the other at intersections. That's a pretty basic expectation to have when one lives in a town or city. Whether your experts choose pedestrian bridges, stop signs, crosswalks, traffic lights, our only request is that you do it yesterday. Time is of the essence here. Lives do depend on your response to this presentation and petition. We don't want to wait until we have to scrape someone off the pavement on Lyndale Road for you to take action. Thank you very much.
And thank you. Very good. Very timely. And any questions from committee members? I see Mayor Luke's hand. Councillor Oliver.
Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you, and Mrs. Breen, thank you for your deputation. You did very well.
Thank you.
I do have a question for you, and I want to lead into it by saying that I'm agreeing with pretty well everything you're saying. And my question is, think what you're saying here. One of the biggest issues is someone turning off of Norfolk Street, let's say, at the west end onto Wilson, they will be stopped only once getting to wherever they're going, even if it's as far as Ireland, at Donley.
That's correct.
And plus the hill in there and the whole bit and the turn, and they open up when they get to the straightaway there at the corner.